This is my best kind of show notes because we didn't touch one of them, not even one of them. I'm not sure which one is Paul Rudd and which one is Lane Green.
Final card here is the ultimate outcome.
Today is Take Your Dog to Work Day.
Oh, like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. Without further ado, his debut.
Sweet Caroline.
Everybody say hello to Sammy. Is that not good?
I'm just pausing so that you just are at the front of your screen.
I'm so enormously flattered.
Branding is not a bad blind date.
I'm gonna have to take a picture of this.
No, this is agape. This is love.
I really enjoyed this. You did do your homework. You asked great questions.
I'm flattered. Thank you. You just made my day.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
How did I do that? You're insane.
Well, January 22nd, 2021. How the hell are you? It's Friday. It's Friday. It is time for Corona TV, Corona Community with 4 or 5 of the best. She has very, very narrowly avoided the third strikeout, Carla Johnson, but she is with us. As is Scott McKain, as is Melanie, Deziel, as is Engelina, Jaspers. Peter Rork, we don't know where you are. This is exactly what happened on New Year's Eve, but I will try and figure out how to get you back on the show. I miss you, man. I miss you, man. There's a distinct theme today, and we can't do it without you. We also can't do it without peri peri sauce. It is National Hot Sauce Day, National Hot Sauce Day, and this is my choice du jour. It's Nando's peri peri sauce, extra hot. I drink the stuff. I could drink this entire bottle right now on air. I won't because let's just leave it at that. I won't. But I do love this stuff. I used to actually drink it. I mean, not chug it, but drink it. So I love spicy things in life. I love spicy people. I love spicy conversations. I love spicy sauce as well. So hopefully wherever you are having a good day as you celebrate National Hot Sauce Day. Well, today I celebrate 5 of the best. And I really, really love these community shows. I love the fact that these interviews are not one and done. I mean, life should never be like that. It should never just be I was on their show or they were on my show and now we don't talk to them again, or maybe we do when we have something to promote. That's not how I roll. I mean, I will roll like that if you want me to. But at the end of the day, these are friendships. These are real relationships. And, you know, I think you earn the right to call someone a friend in life. And that is my aspiration. So let me give you a quick heads up in terms of what you can expect next week. It is just an incredible week. Scott Rouse, who is a guy that, I mean, we've rescheduled 2 or 3 times. He's a body language expert. He's a profiler. He works with the police. He works with the FBI. Literally the reason why he canceled last time is he was on a case, a really important one. Ford Sachs is going to be with us on Tuesday. He was going to be on and he canceled because he had this thing called COVID. Maybe you've heard of it, but he's well, he's recovered. So he's going to be on the show, an amazing speaker. Lauren Griffiths on Wednesday. How do I even describe Lauren? Lauren set the world alight by changing her profile picture on LinkedIn from the retouched, airbrushed, professional, corporate approved biopic to the one that you see on your screen right now. She was like, listen, what's the real me right now? I haven't been to the hairdresser in a while. I haven't, you know, I'm wearing sweats. This is the real me. And people just responded to her because they were all feeling it. They were all feeling it at the same time. And I just had to talk to her. And then Daniel Golden on Thursday. Daniel is a Pulitzer Prize winner, and we're going to be talking about 2 of his just incredible books that really focus on the U.S. college system and how it has become an elitist, almost kind of buy your way into college, and also how some of the colleges are recruiting for FBI, CIA, just fascinating stuff. And then next Friday, 5 of the best again. You know, I would have to say 5 of the second best, because the people that are with me today are the best. But of course, next week, I'll tell these guys they're the best. I'm just kidding. I'm a politician. Jason Borowitz, Judy Glover, Peter Shankman, David Berkowitz, the other one, and Mr. Chad Dick. And they will be with us on Friday. Well, let's do some birthdays. Kirk Skodis, who are the people that responded to me today? Audrey Sudran, Mindy Beth, Jeff Benjamin, happy birthday to you guys. And then finally, Bob Linden, Ashley Dale, Ronald Schmitz. Hope you guys are having an amazing, amazing day. Well, you have birthdays, and then unfortunately, you have the opposite of birthdays, the cycle of life. It is the most inevitable aspect of our lives today. Just before I started the show today, we found out that, I spoke about 3 strikes, and Scott McKain will be our leadoff hitter. But the ultimate hitter, home run legend, just legend in general, Hank Aaron, just passed away. And we think of him, we think of his family and his legacy. And boy, oh boy, did he leave a legacy behind. I have one more. I was going to mention it to him, and I hope I'm not putting him too much on the spot and that he takes us in the best possible way. But we also said goodbye this week to Bonzo. And I mentioned that there would be certainly a theme here as well. But Scott's dog passed away. They are our best friend, man's best friend, woman's best friend. And I just wanted to send my condolences to the McCains, because, my dog is just such an incredible part of my life. Scott, let me bring you onto the show. I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I was going to mention it.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you. You saw online when Tammy and I were dating, I got Bonzo because her 2 boys, who at that time were 14 and 11, had never had a dog. And I wanted to make sure a dog was in their life. So this is before, Tammy and I were living together and all of that. I just wanted to, and so Bonzo had been with Tammy longer than we've been married, which is 15 years. So it's strange. The house seems quiet and all of that, but at the end of the day, it's just like so many things in life. Joseph, you have to make a choice, and the choice that Tam and I have made is we're going to appreciate the years that we had with him more than we are grieving his passing. Although we're certainly doing that because life is different. But I really appreciate that. That is so kind, my friend.
And he's behind me right now as well.
He is.
He's with us all the time. Yes. And so I mean, it's the least I can do, because when you share. Sometimes you don't realize who's on the other side, but we are there, and we're there for you, and we're always with you. Now, Scott, from that to something else, we have a little icebreaker question today, which you're going to be put completely on the spot. If you could hang out with any cartoon character, who would you choose and why?
What a great question. Joseph, you never cease to amaze me with the questions that you ask, because there's no way you could ever prepare for what you. Here's the first thing that popped in my mind: Bugs Bunny. And the reason I choose Bugs Bunny is because he always handles the situation. Everything from conducting an orchestra to going hunting with Elmer Fudd. He always takes whatever situation it is and makes it funny, but also he's if he's not the smartest rabbit in the room, he's certainly the most clever. I've always been a Bugs Bunny fan, so I'd love to hang with Bugs.
Well, and you, I've always viewed you as the smartest rabbit in the room. Someone else who is equally smart is Engelina Jaspers. Welcome back to the show, Engelina.
Thank you. It's a wonderful to be here. Thank you, Joseph.
Now the jig is up. You know exactly what the question is. So if you could hang out with any cartoon character, who would you choose and why?
Yeah, well, I'm going to follow Scott's lead. You know, the first thing that popped in my mouth was in my mind was Minnie Mouse. I'm getting ahead of myself. So Minnie Mouse, I wonder if she really speaks and talks. I hear those characters don't talk at all. So I'd really love to hear what she thought about the women's rights movement, and being and hanging out with Mickey all day. So yeah, I think Minnie would be an interesting conversation.
All right. Now we move to now. We don't know where Peter Rork is, but I will never give up on Peter. I've got to figure out how to bluff my way to not bluff my way, but figure out how to get a message to him. Peter, if you are watching online right now, text me or contact me. We'll get you on the show. Don't worry about it. It's all going to be okay. But hopefully we'll see Peter at some point. But Melanie Deziel, she is here. Welcome back to the show, Melanie.
Hey there. Thanks for letting me join this Brady bunch of a grid.
We are continuing to expand. Now, you know what the question is. The question is, what cartoon character would you want to hang out with and why?
So maybe this is controversial, but I think I would want to hang out with Wile E. Coyote because, I mean, the poor guy is always messing up. And I feel like maybe we could do some problem solving together. We could, you know, he could devise some more efficient traps. I just feel like there's a learning opportunity there and I would enjoy it.
Wile E. Coyote. Well, you know what? Someone who is quite wily is Mr. Peter Rork. Peter.
Oh my gosh, I've been waiting on my other computer. So I was wondering what the hell is going on here?
I'm telling you, you know what? We finally figured it out. So settle in, relax, enjoy yourself. I'm even going to put your mic a little bit higher. How's that? Did you hear the icebreaker question?
Oh, no, go ahead and please repeat it.
So the icebreaker question is, which cartoon character would you want to hang out with and why?
Oh my gosh. Probably Foghorn Leghorn. I mean, it's just
a good
son.
one.
I say son.
I said, son. I said, welcome to StreamYard.
Yeah,
Peter, I'm so glad you are here, my friend. As you can see, I have Bonzo behind me. Scott's dog Bonzo passed away. I don't know, Scott, have you ever met Peter before?
I have not, but I'm excited to be here with him today. So hi, Peter. I'm Scott. Nice to meet you.
Scott, good morning. Thank you.
Peter, why don't you tell everyone, just for a bit of a recap, a little bit about you and about Dog is My Co-Pilot?
Sure. I was an orthopedic surgeon for 30 years, quit medicine in 2012 after the sudden death of my wife, and then started a nonprofit called Dog is My Co-Pilot. And we offer long-distance transportation to the shelters that are overrun with dogs and use euthanasia as one of their population control tools. So I've flown over 17,000 animals to date. So we're always struggling to stay aloft with donations. And so here we are. We fly a Cessna Caravan, which I've had 250 animals on board at one time. But our typical load is between 80 and 130 animals, depending on the size, because the volume of the crates kind of bulks out the cabin that's behind me. But we fly about 7 months a year, don't fly during the winter because, you know, the ice on the road is bad when you're driving and ice in the clouds is bad when you're flying. So I'm off to North Carolina tomorrow for a week of simulator training to keep up my skills. Was able to add 7 pilots this year, so we'll be flying every day of the week and hope to fly 6,000 animals this year to safety.
He's a great, you know, if anyone's looking for a guest, this is, if he has the time and is not flying and saving lives. I mean, 17,000 plus, just an amazing story. Well, you know, no less amazing is Carla Johnson, last but definitely not least. And Carla, the beauty of it is you will be the last person to leave. So so we are very, you know, democratic here on Corona TV. How are you? you know you were so close to that third strike, right?
You know, oh man, I tell you, I was sweating it. And then when he sent me the note that asked, "Where are you?" and I was backstage waiting, man, I said to Tom Morris, I think I've been more stressed about making sure I showed up for your show today on time than I probably was for my own wedding. Not that there was more at risk, but I think maybe more forgiveness. But maybe if I'd been late for my own wedding 3 times or missed it, that might be different consequences. But I love being here. So thank you so much for having me back and for giving me that third opportunity.
Well, you know what? I would have given you a fourth, but don't tell anyone. Tom Morris says he's torn between Winnie the Pooh and Joseph Jaspers. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Mark Master says, hello from sunny seaside in England. Jan says, a masterclass of guests. Stephen is watching with pleasure, and just looking at all the comments coming in. So you know what? Appreciate you guys out there, but we're here to hear from Mr. Scott McKain. I will say to my guest today, someone has a little bit of interference on their mic, so maybe just mute when you're not talking. That'll be a nice, easy way for us to manage the flow. But Mr. Scott McKain, the egg timer is yours, my friend. 5. You know, by the way, I mean, no one should ever give you 5 minutes. Not the Scott McKain, but you have done some of your weekend shows that have inspired me to no end in less than 5 minutes. But anyway, 5 minutes is yours. Take it away.
Well, I think one of the most important things that we can answer, those of us that are in business, is why would a prospect or customer choose us instead of the competition? My life's work is on how do you create distinction? How do you do that through the experience that your customers encounter? How do you do that from the stories that you tell? How do you do that in all of the things that you do as you approach the world? What does it take to stand out in a hyper competitive world? And so part of this happened. Peter mentioned the passing of his wife. I lost my first wife to cancer, and I spent time as a caregiver, which meant that I kind of had to put my speaking business on hold. And as I tried to get back in with tons of debt and broke and everything else, I had to figure out how to make myself stand out. Joseph, you've heard the story. I went to speakers bureaus that book us to speak. And I said, when you recommend me, what do you say? And the number one answer was a good speaker and a nice guy. I work hard to be a good speaker, and I want to be a nice guy, but no client is booking that, right? No client says, boy, what we need at our next event is somebody really nice. They want you to be a content expert. They want you to have something to say. They want you to bring something to the party. And so I started researching what did it take to stand out. And what I learned was it was really hard to find something. And the blinding flash, the obvious was, if I needed this, what's the chance that other people would as well? And so that led to my first book called Collapse of Distinction, which happened during the economic collapse of 2007, 2008. Revised that, updated it into Create Distinction. My latest book is called Iconic. And I work with organizations, on what they can do to stand out. Part of that standing out is in telling a distinctive story. One of the things I do is to recommend that they get Melanie's book, by the way, and I look forward to talking to her about that, but because it's one of the greatest books. It is the greatest book on how to create consistent content, and we're doing a program on distinctive story that I'm excited about. For a decade, I lived a double life. Now, it wasn't what that sounds at first. As I was building my speaking business, because I'd had the privilege of appearing in a couple of movies, I was asked, living in the Louisville area, and was asked to be the movie reviewer for the local CBS affiliate there. That expanded into being syndicated to 100 television markets. So I got to interview the great screenwriters and directors and performers and ask them about how did they prepare and write and deliver an incredible story. And so from that, I wrote my first book called All Business is Show Business. And it talks about the importance of creating these emotionally compelling experiences, whether we're talking about watching it on a screen or experiencing it where we do business. So all of that leads to, I'm privileged to be here as a part of this today, and hope to contribute a little bit about what we can do to make those things that we do stand out in a hyper-competitive marketplace. Oh, I can't hear you, Joseph.
You see, I very kindly muted myself.
You were following your own instructions. I like that. Yeah.
You know, if I don't mess up at least one time in a show, then something's wrong. So I have two questions, and maybe we can carry one of them over into the after show. The first question, so I'll ask them both. You choose which one you want to answer. What is the difference between distinctiveness and differentiation? Okay. And then the second question is this idea that of being a show, of elevating the functional, the transactional to something that is emotional, experiential, in terms of even whether you present yourself or presenting. How important is it to recognize that every time we are on stage, we are in fact performers and performing? Which one you want to take?
Well, I want to save the second one if I could till later, because there's a lot that goes into that, and that's a more detailed and involved answer. But the first one is there is a significant difference between differentiation and distinction. I hear people say, "Oh, we're going to get out there and be different." Well, if I slap every customer in the face, I'm different. Right? I mean, but they're never going to come back and buy anything else from me again. Different is not better if it has no traction with your intended audience, with your intended prospects and customers. So distinction is what we do, not only represents who we are, but is something that our target market finds significant and important and meaningful.
I love it. And we are, look at this, almost perfectly timed. But if anyone wants to jump in, maybe one comment from our incredible list of friends. I won't even call you panelists or speakers or anything. Anyone want to add to that? Because what a great response. The difference between differentiation and being distinctive or distinction.
I just love listening to Scott in general. But I love how much of that carries over to the execution of that distinction in our content and in our marketing too, because I think there's a lot of that same mentality of, okay, well, we're going to market ourselves differently. We're going to be on a different platform or something. But if there isn't that strategic choice behind it and it doesn't resonate with the intended audience, again, it all feels stunty and it just doesn't land right. So I love seeing the parallels between that side of things.
Now, there's a very good segue. On Monday, Ahava Leibtag was in the house, and we had a pretty interesting conversation about, is it content design? Is it content responsive? I gave you the punchline. Is it content design? Is it content strategy? Is it content marketing? And we came up with this new concept called content responsibility, and this was the bite. I want to give you another term, the idea of content responsibility. Words have meaning, words have power. Maybe we need to start to talk about content integrity, content responsibility, and not just push out content and so frivolously, so superficially, or so maybe even callously.
Well, it's a very nice idea, but in corporate America, it doesn't work. The chief marketing officer might say to you, I don't really care. I have to go into the CFO's office and prove return on investment. So you need to show me that our traffic increased. Well, what's the number one way to get traffic to increase? It's to publish a scary headline. Integrity is defined as what you do when no one is looking.
You could almost very easily apply that to content, which is almost what you write when no one's clicking. It's the stuff that perhaps isn't going to get the engagement, but ultimately it's the stuff that's important. I was just smiling ear to ear because I'm just looking at Melanie just smiling back at me as well. At least she wasn't going, that's completely wrong.
No, I was nodding. I was smiling. I mean, there was nearly a fist bump in there. I'm here.
I love that idea. Integrity, right? It's what you write when no one's clicking. So the amazing little build that just came out in that conversation. Engelina, I know you have something to say about that, but more importantly, your 5 minutes starts more or less now.
All right. So I thought I'd just spend a minute setting it up, and then I really do want the wisdom of the crowd to kind of walk through it. So I'm going to bring up a concept that I'd love your input, dissecting and better understanding. So as a little bit of background, I'm in the early stages of writing my second book. This one is focused on career agility. So how to make the leap from expert to Executive. And in it, I highlight 50 ways to leave your old self in the dust, so to speak. So it's still being formulated. But one of those ways that that I highlight is developing your executive presence, this whole concept of executive presence. Now, from experience, I know the importance of developing hard skills and soft skills, and doing that is really pretty straightforward, and there's a lot of online resources and training available to help you do that. But this third category remains somewhat of a mystery, even to me, a 30-year corporate veteran, and that's because executive presence is about power and influence. So executive presence has been called the mysterious X factor on the corporate ladder to success, a trait that all aspiring executives know they need, but it's murky at best. Is it charisma? Is it grace under pressure? Is it how you dress, behave, and talk? Is it breaking into an old boys network? Or is it simply a polite way of saying, look, you've advanced about as far as you're going to advance in this company? So exactly what is executive presence and how does one develop it? One thing is certain, hard work and merit are simply not enough to advance from expert to executive. So with that, I would love your input and your insights.
Well, I am going to turn it over to 4 good people, because it comes back to what Scott was saying at the beginning. Is it enough to be a good person in addition to all these other things? But I do just want to say one thing. If you need someone to sing the track to the book, 50 ways to leave your old self.
Paul Simon. Yeah. Could you sing that for me? I thought of that, 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover by Paul Simon. So this is 50 ways to leave your old self in the dust.
It would be my honor. Who wants to respond to what Engelina laid down just now?
I would love to. And I think it's a fascinating question. And when I look at that idea of power or influence, because I've looked at that the last couple of years as far as why do some people become so influential and others don't? Like, what's that little thing that they have? Because a lot of times it's not necessarily talent or intelligence, but what's that distinctive factor, that Scott talks about that makes them different? And I read a book called The Charisma Myth, and it really changed, I think, the importance that I place on charisma and how I look at it. And, kind of before I'd say, oh, they're so charismatic, and kind of think of them as a little smarmy sort of thing. But as I started to study it, and this book was amazing, and one of the most iconic charismatic leaders that we've ever known was Bill Clinton, and the book breaks down like why he was so charismatic and why people were just so enamored with him. And a lot of it is that ability to be deeply, deeply present with whoever or whatever he was, working on or with. And I think that ability to help other people see that you are fully present and that they matter is a big part of what ultimately creates that influence and power. And I think a lot of, especially corporate executives, look at how can I get them to see me as influential? How can I be influential over them, instead of looking at how can I be fully present so this person feels seen and heard. And I think that's a big part of power and influence that people don't give a nod to, that it's actually important.
That's good. That's excellent insight. Thank you. I'm going to read that book, The Charisma Myth.
Yeah, it's
The Charisma Myth. I would add that what has happened is, this idea of you've come as far as you can, it's flipping on its head right now, which is there are people in politics, in the corporate boardroom, that have gone or come further or gone farther than maybe they ought to have.
Yeah.
And they won't be able to trade on that anymore or as much as they used to. So there is a bit of a redressing and a rebalance of power. And hopefully we will see that sooner rather than later.
I was just going to add, I think that self-awareness has to be in that definition somewhere, because I think in many ways, executive presence is the ability to put the correct presence depending on the context, that in some situations you need to be humble, and others you need to, project confidence, and others you need to be firm or understanding. So I think there's got to be some combination of empathy and self-awareness to create that match for the right moment.
I love that. There is a woman named Sylvia Ann Hewlett, and she wrote the book called Executive Presence. And she said there's 3 pillars. Her research showed there was 3 pillars to develop executive presence. The one was gravitas, and that was 67%. The second one was communication, and she attributed 28%, and only 5% for the third pillar, which was appearance. So I hear gravitas at 67%, and my head explodes. It's like, okay, now I'm even further. What's that? I have to walk with a swagger? What is gravitas? But maybe it's part of this empathy and self-awareness. And
it does sound like a word chosen from a pool of distinctly male executives. I will say that.
Perhaps her research, and to her, perhaps that was back then was, the pool that she had available to her.
Well, you have somewhat crowdsourced part of your book, and you can continue to do that in the after show. This is why I created this beautiful community, for us to help each other and help us build momentum. But I love what you're writing, and certainly when that book comes out, you know where to come first to promote the book. We will welcome you with open arms.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Now, I would love to give you a natural segue to the next CoronaByte. There isn't really one, but still, I think the insight from Jon Miller, who's the Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Product Officer of Demandbase, was a really fascinating little clip and insight about whether to gate your content or not, whether to hide your content or not behind a form or a paywall. And this is what he had to say. Are we too far gone? Is it too little too late to now be able to get business buyers and influencers into a mindset that they're not going to be, I don't want to say spammed, but certainly kind of, stalked maybe when they just do something as innocuous as downloading a white paper?
Well, I don't know why we need to put that white paper behind a form. First and foremost,
Good point. That's
if I'm going to have that if somebody wants to access that content, I wrote it for a reason. I want them to read it because I want to help educate and entertain them and kind of bring them forward. The only reason why you put it behind a form is so that you can track the buying signal. But frankly, with technology, we don't need to do that. If you have a halfway decent marketing automation implementation, you can know that somebody downloaded that ebook, even if they haven't, filled out a form right then and there.
Interesting.
Yeah, I love that insight. Now, let me tell you, Tom Morris says the only gravitas worth having is where nobility meets humility. There are few men, women, humans on this planet that exude both nobility and humility as Peter Rork. How's that for a setup, Peter? We can. How are you going to follow up best practices on B2B marketing and content strategy? You've got 5 minutes. Take it away. Whatever is on your mind.
Part is during that time, I was a trauma surgeon taking my call in the local hospital for the traumas that occurred. So there wasn't a whole lot of marketing involved when a patient wrapped his car around a tree, and I presented to the emergency room to attend to his open tibia fracture. So it wasn't as if I had to sell. In medicine, we have a different approach to things. They talk about appearance, attitude, and ability in that order. And there are a lot of bad surgeons out there who really put on a good show, and they are quite convincing about their abilities, et cetera. So it's really the kind of caveat emptor. I mean, let the buyer beware. So after I left that, and and started the nonprofit, I've always been an individual. There's no medicine by committee when you're in the operating room and you're holding that knife in your hand. There's not a lot of people giving you advice. You either have the plan or you don't have the plan. And so I really, I always try to do what I thought was right. And I always try to fill a need. And after I left medicine, and really the story behind that is my wife had a cardiac event. She collapsed into a coma and died about 2 weeks later. And I had her home and took care of her during that 2 weeks. And after seeing what she went through, it was a game changer for me. I mean, I went to the darkest place imaginable. And then my partners came back and said, well, when are you going to come back and practice medicine again? And I started thinking about all those patients whose problems now seem so insignificant in comparison. And I would give myself a little test. And the test would be, I'd be sitting in my office on a Monday morning. I was seeing a post-op patient 3 weeks out from a knee arthroscopy and a meniscus repair or something like that. And they would be complaining to me that they weren't better yet. And I'd tell them to go get the hell out of here. I mean, not so much nice words. And so I figured until I came up with a better response than that, I should stay away from medicine. And when I started the nonprofit, because I've always liked dogs, and I really didn't even know there was a need. I saw an ad for a thing called Pilots and Paws in a flying magazine, where a pilot gets his airplane and he flies one dog to the next place, and I thought, oh, well, that might be fun, and it's a real feel-good kind of thing. And I did that, and it's really kind of a novelty. You're not making any headway or making a dent in anything. And I met a gal named Sharon Lohman, who runs a program called New Beginnings in the Central Valley of California in Merced. And that really opened my eyes. That was the first time I saw what the problem was. And I knew I had the resources, I knew I had the time, and I knew I had the skill. And that's what I devoted my life to moving forward. And still, it wasn't by committee. It was that single pilot operator. He's got that one knife in his hand. I've got the one airplane. I soon became overwhelmed with the need, and then got a much larger aircraft. And even with that, I mean, the aircraft cost $1 million. We didn't have the money for it, so I went out and mortgaged my house to loan the money to the nonprofit, without any idea on how are we going to be paid back. But I really didn't care. I just knew that was the direction that we had to go, and I figured all the details would take care of themselves. I mean, when I was treating a femur fracture, I didn't give thought to how those osteoblasts were going to jump the fracture site and do the repair. I would just kind of line up the fracture, put a rod down it, and move on to the next case, and let nature take its course. And so that's kind of what I did with Doug as my co-pilot. And now I have 7 other guys flying for me. We're flying the wings off the airplane. We just came off a really banner year, in spite of the slow start that the sometimes irrational human responses to the presence of COVID presented as an obstacle. But we're looking forward to a great 2021. You know, it's just up to the individual to go out, identify the need. And as was said earlier, it's amazing how much good can be done when you don't care who gets the credit. And, I kept my head down. I just kept working hard. And this past year, CBS Sunday Morning ran a piece on us, and it really kind of gave us a spot on the national map. That was followed by the Hallmark Channel, Fox News, NBC News. So I had kind of my 15 minutes of fame. But that's behind me now.
Let me tell you, your 15 minutes are not done yet, because I love the fact that you retold your story, because it doesn't get old. First of all, working backwards, you mortgaged your house. You know, there are so many entrepreneurs out there that aren't prepared to go all in. that are hedging, that have a day job while they're trying to get their start off the ground. You are the embodiment and the epitome of what it is to be an entrepreneur. Second of all, you spoke about perspective, and you became not just a voice, but a hero to people not people, but in this case, to animals that didn't have a voice. What a noble thing to do. But I'm just going to go back to the first thing you said. The 3 A's, appearance, attitude, ability. We could be talking about Engelina's book or about performing on stage so far. What a perfect middle guest to actually say we're not actually talking about that, about corporate business, whatever. We're talking about life. We're talking about being a good leader. We're talking about being a good human being. And I'm going to use that actually as a segue to go into our third CoronaByte, which was with Jason Falls, also on Wednesday, so the middle of the week. And he spoke about the difference between influencer marketing and influence marketing. You, Peter, are about influence as opposed to influencer, and you'll see what I mean by this.
The mainstream media, when they reported about influencers, still looked at them with oh, this is cute. It's people with, duck lips and peace signs taking pictures of their food, and it's airbrushed and it's fake and it's going away, and you don't need to really even think about this much. We have backed ourselves into a corner, calling it influencer marketing and allowing people to think that it's only beauty and fashion influencers on Instagram and YouTube, and that it's superficial and not effective. We need to reframe it. We need to rethink how we think about it. And so I thought about it. Wait a minute. We're talking about, we always call it influencer marketing. We focus on the influencer. What are we trying to accomplish? We're trying to influence. We're trying to influence an audience. We're trying to persuade them to take an action. So if we look at influencer marketing, change it just a little bit and say, let's call it influence marketing, and focusing on the action that you're trying to achieve, the goal you're trying to get to versus the channel you're trying to use.
Isn't that a great way to actually to differentiate and distinct in terms of the quality versus the quantity? All right, so we're going to keep moving on. Melanie Deziel, I've just loved you being on the show today because you've just been smiling at everything and backstage, so to speak. So now you get to be front stage, and I can do the smiling back at you.
Well, it's funny you say that because on the last CoronaByte, when we had a moment, I was like, man, my face hurts. I'm doing a lot of smiling. Like these are some good bites, So what's been on my mind that I'd be curious to hear from you all is I've been reading a book or listening to the audiobook called 99% Invisible City. And if you're not familiar, 99% Invisible is an incredible podcast where they talk about sort of the hidden parts of our world that have incredible design and backstory that maybe we've never thought of before. Unsurprisingly, as a story person, I love kind of hearing these interesting backstories. And a couple of the things that really caught my attention were things that I didn't realize were marketing was at their root. And so just as an example, it was the motor industry that coined the term jaywalker to try to shift blame from incidents where collisions happen from the operators of vehicles or the makers of vehicles toward those of us who maybe were walking where we weren't supposed to be, right? And the other one was that the idea, the concept of penthouses and of top floors being prime real estate was actually a marketing ploy by the Otis Elevator Company when they were primarily being used in more of an industrial kind of environment. They had this idea that, well, right now the first floor is the premium real estate in a hotel because it's, fewer stairs and you have quick access. Well, what if we try to convince the hotels that the higher they go, the more premium floors they can have away from the street noise? And so they sort of, as a marketing tool for elevators in more of a consumer environment, created this concept of the higher floors and the penthouse being the more premium and luxury experiences. And so I was kind of curious. I think probably in our different lines of work, we may know of little anecdotes like that, like something that you didn't know was a marketing thing. And I'm always interested in those little stories. So I'd love to hear if anyone's got little sprinkles of stories where marketing has made its mark, but kept it a secret.
And I'm sure you guys have. So why don't you, I'll turn it over to you guys. I mean, the only thing that's jumping out at me right now is the fact that the active ingredient in Coca-Cola was cocaine, but I'm not really sure how that was Coke is a marketing company.
Great way to get repeat business, right?
I'm telling you. Anyone have any other anecdotes? And certainly if you're watching right now, you can paste them in the comments.
So Melanie, I'm sure you've read Edward Bernays. He's the master of this. Do you know that he's known as the father of modern day public relations? But he's the one, and he was related. He's a nephew of Sigmund Freud, if that tells you anything about him. But he's the one that in the, I don't remember what era this was, but people used to eat porridge or cereal for breakfast. And he was representing the pork industry. And he changed that paradigm to say a good, healthy breakfast would be orange juice, bacon and eggs, and toast with orange juice, in support of the pork industry to push bacon. And all of a sudden everybody said, you know, bacon and eggs for breakfast was the way to go. He also did the same thing in the cigarette industry to make cigarettes look fashionable. Remember they used to have the little,
right?
You know, with the little holders for women, you know, Victoria's Slim cigarettes. It was all marketing. So read up on some of the things that he regrets. Well, he's passed away since, but he regretted some of the things that he supported. But it's really a form of propaganda, if you ask me.
Yeah, and to add on to that just a little bit, the whole idea of breakfast and the Kellogg's company saying, you know, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And oh, by the way, here's an amazing breakfast cereal that's easy, quick, convenient. And, you know, that was, you know, I think about my mom saying that all the time. Oh, it's the most important meal of the day. And had she known it was purely a marketing ploy, she might have thought differently.
Yeah.
That's right. And actually that story was in one of the definitive books on intermittent fasting. It was also all of the cereal companies that were getting the subsidies, the government subsidies at the time. It was also at the time when the whole FDA pyramid was released. So it's unbelievable. Look, marketing manipulation has always been a part of our lives. But we need, you know, hopefully we're turning or making a turn, I should say, for the better, because otherwise, you know, marketing's been through the ringer in 2020 in terms of just, you know, as I say, taking your one foot out your mouth in order to insert your other. That kind of behaviors is not going to be tolerated anymore.
Agree.
Definitely not. Well, and I think it's just interesting for me, like as a marketer, I think we often feel bad about some of the things we have to be involved in. I mean, I know I certainly have, you know, you work on a particular campaign or you work with a certain client that in retrospect, you're like, maybe that didn't align with my values in the way that it probably could have. But to me, it's just interesting to see the far-reaching effects that we can have. I mean, the idea of breakfast as a meal, the entire world thinks there's 3 meals a day. I mean, 3 square meals, right? And that came from somebody in a room who had the crazy idea of like, what if we invent a meal? Like, what if we just invent a meal? And everyone probably thought they were crazy, and here we are, you know?
Well, and Dr. Kellogg created cornflakes to be the absolute most bland thing that he could serve at his clinic for the folks at the clinic in the morning. There's some fascinating. There's a great satirical movie on it called The Road to Wellness with Anthony Hopkins playing Dr. Kellogg, and it's some of the crazy, crazy ideas that he had about health and all that really generated the whole cereal company and everything else. So Melanie, I love that. The backstories on some of these things are absolutely fascinating.
Well, we won't even get into would you like fries with that, or would you like to supersize that? But we're about to supersize this episode with Carla Johnson. But before we do that, let me ask you guys this question. Have a look at the final CoronaByte from this week, where Adam Ferrier talks about the effort paradox. And you can determine whether IKEA, in fact, is a master marketer or a marketer manipulator.
Again, there's not a customer in the world that says, if I want a bookcase, I want to travel for an hour to a store, walk right around the store to a really, 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 really long maze, buy the bookcase, take it home. I want to build it myself, and there I'll have a lovely bookcase. That's not customer-centric thinking. If you ask the customer what they want, they'll be able to say, I want to look at it online, have it delivered, and put it standing there. is the IKEA effect is a subsection of an overall body of work in psychology called the effort paradox. The effort paradox basically says the more effort we put into anything, the more we value it. IKEA's challenge is going to have to be, as they move forwards, they're going to have waves of customer research saying, make it easier for me to buy your stuff. And they're going to have to weigh up that versus the value of the brand, which is in this whole concept of co-creation and effort.
The effort paradox. It's kind of like parenting as well, but hopefully it's worth it. The more you put in, the more you get out. Well, Carla Johnson, as you can see, my background has changed to honor your new book, but you are our closer today. So the 5-minute stage is yours.
Thank you all. And I have to say, Joseph, I appreciate you updating your background, but I have been enjoying the picture of Scott's dog behind you. And Scott, I'm sorry to hear about your dog because I know there's nothing that replaces the love of a pet. And we got a dog right before COVID hit, and it's been just magical to have the little energy. He's only a 15-pound terrier. But the other thing, Joseph, is that you've had this amazing like Dolly Parton vibe about you during this whole show because it's this aura of Scott's dog behind you, and she's one of my favorite people. And I love that. Thank you for that.
You weren't referring to my cleavage, so that's fine.
Not this show because you have that higher neckline. But I wanted to talk a little bit about something you and I talked about earlier this week, Joseph, and then share it to the group to have their input. And the name of my book that's coming out is called Rethink Innovation. And I've worked on it for several years. But if you think about anything that we've had to rethink, it's everything in our lives this last year. And even as everybody before me has talked about, there's something that we're rethinking. You know, Scott, with how do you truly become distinctive, and how can you rethink that being, you know, the nice guy who does a great job just isn't enough? And how do you start to look at how do we rethink executive presence? And maybe it is more about empathy rather than power and influence. And how do we, you know, rethink what we believe and how we're going to pursue things that have meaning in our life, or the stories behind the work that we do. So I know for me, I've been rethinking a lot about how I approach the business and the work that I do, which, you know, mostly is speaking, but also this last year I've been doing a tremendous amount of training as my clients start to rethink, okay, how do we prepare our teams for the work that we do, and how do we rethink and do something differently, because certainly we can't go on the way we have been. So my question to everybody here is, what's something that you've been rethinking this last year, or will continue to rethink going forward, that maybe you're a little surprised about or didn't expect because of this past year that we've been through?
That's great. I love it when the last person speaking then opens it up and asks everyone else. So who wants to go first? Anyone rethinking anything at the moment?
Carla, first off, I love that. I mean, that's extraordinary. And I love the concept of rethinking because frankly, you know, I've been doing this a long time and we're rethinking everything. I mean, I think when you have your foundation upset, you either, you know, go in a corner and pull the cover over your head, or you rethink everything. Here's what we're rethinking. My entire career has been based on an organization asking me to come speak on their stage. What happens when there aren't any stages? And so we're rethinking the business of what if we own the stage? What if I developed the platform and attracted people to my platform rather than doing all the marketing that we've done as speakers to go out and appear on other platforms? And it's scary as hell. But if, you know, sometimes innovation, you know, it's the oldest line in the world, necessity is the mother of invention. And sometimes this necessity created by this pandemic has forced us to be innovative. I don't like the book, Good to Great, but I love the opening line. Good is the enemy of great. And many times our good careers and our good incomes and our good service prevents us from delivering at a level of greatness. So I love your concept of rethinking it. That's
Peter, what about you? Are you rethinking anything in 21? I'll unmute you. There you go.
Large number. We're anticipating. There we go. A large number of animals being returned to the shelter. A lot of people were at home this past year, self-isolating. They went to the pound. They picked up a dog. When they go back to work, they're going to think, well, who's going to take care of the dog? So they'll just take the dog back to the pound, when in fact, the dog is a lot better off sitting on your couch than he is laying on a concrete floor surrounded by chain link fence. So, well, hopefully that won't occur, but, you know, having been in the people business for a long time, I'm never really surprised just what kind of silly and short-sighted decisions and mistakes they make.
Well, we hope that is a rethink that will certainly work in not just your favor, but all those beautiful animals. Engelina and Melanie, do you want to quickly lob a rethink?
Well, I'm in the same boat as Scott. Obviously, I'm also a speaker. That's my primary, generally my primary form of income. I had the incredible misfortune of launching my book over here the week that we all went into lockdown, and I lost my entire promotional engine. So, yeah, there's been a lot of rethinking over here. But I think, and this is a micro rethink. I used to put a ton of pressure on myself to read physical books, like as if that was some like elevated form of consuming information. And this year I have finally accepted that audiobooks are just as valuable, and in fact more so, because I can actually consume them. And so I have a bookshelf here. Actually, I'll just show you. It's a little out of view here, but you can see I've turned it into more of a thing of beauty than a thing of function. I've allowed myself to organize it in a way that suits the decor, and allow myself to just listen to the books that I'm so excited to learn from, because it better suits my lifestyle now. So I'm glad I was able to rethink that, because I've learned an awful lot this year.
Awesome. And then last but not least, Angelina, what are you rethinking? And then we will get into our wrap up.
Yeah, so I love the concept as well as, and I'm a big challenger of common fallacies, so to speak. So one of the things that I've looked at and I write about is this whole marketing as art and science. Marketing's not about art and science anymore. And everybody will repeat it, or the 4 P's of marketing. Everybody will repeat the same pablum over and over again. And I like to rethink it. And the 4 P's of marketing are now the 4 C's of marketing. You know, it's about the customer. It's not about the product out. It's about the customer in. So rethinking the paradigms, or things that we've held so sacred or so foundational to our success, and I'm speaking from a marketing point of view. Same with art and science. Marketing is not about art and science. And, you know, is it creative sensibilities, or is it data and analytics? It's about insight and agility. So that paradigm has shifted. So I love shifting paradigms and challenging. So bravo. I'm anxious to read it.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I'm rethinking, honestly, consulting. Like, I'd prefer not to do any more consulting in my life if I have any say in the matter. And I just got an email this morning about a consulting project. And I think I just might be very honest with the person going, I'm just not sure I want to consult anymore. Don't take it personally. But of course, if the price is right, I'm your guy.
Joseph, if they're watching the show, you already said no.
I hope they're not. All right. Well, guys, I mean, it's another. I'm so glad it worked out in the end. Peter, I was really worried that I wouldn't see you again, but I'm so glad I did, and I'm so glad everyone else got to meet you and hear your amazing story. We are going to wrap up. We are going to go to the Zoom after show, where I think everyone but Melanie will be on. We'll miss you, Melanie, but we'll be chatting about maybe that other question that I asked Scott. I should also say, Scott, you are going to fire off the Corona question, a little bit of fun as we say goodbye to you. Before we do that, let me just say, Scott McKain, Scott, you created the Distinction Summit. So I think you are showing the way. You are showing the way in terms of creating the owned direct to customer path for the rest of our speakers, thought leaders, consultants. And just stay close to Scott. He's streaming, he's creating content. He is not just a Hall of Fame speaker in name, but in terms of his mettle and his caliber. But Scott, forget about that. Here's what people want to know. who would play you in a movie?
I would hope that I could be played by Meryl Streep. And the reason I say that is, if you've ever seen the movie about Bob Dylan, the best performance there is Cate Blanchett. It transcends gender stereotypes. It transcends all of that. So for me, if you say who would play you in a movie, why wouldn't you pick your favorite performer regardless of gender?
I mean, I feel that Meryl Streep's ears are ringing right now.
And her husband is from Indiana, you know, and her husband. I got to interview her one time, and I said my wife thought that she saw you at Target on. You know, it obviously is your doppelganger. And she said, "Oh, you mean the one on 38th Street? Yeah, my mother-in-law lives right down the road. That was probably me." When I'm in Indianapolis, people say, "Oh, you look like Meryl Streep." He said, if I'm in New York, people go, "Oh my God, it's Meryl Streep." You know, you don't think of Meryl Streep in Target. And so she would get it because she would get my background, and she's also my favorite performer. So
well. Thank you, Scott. And not many people know this, but Scott's middle name is Merrill. So, Scott, we'll see you in the after show. It was awesome having you on. Angelina, you don't even have to answer the question. I'm just going to answer it for you. We all know it's you know, I'm sure that you've never been told that before, but you know, do you want to have a real stab at answering the question?
I like the one that you picked. I think that's awesome. I love that.
I think I might pick up for me too.
It's the different Angie, right? I love it. I think I'd go with her.
All right. Well then,
awesome.
You know, consider it done. Angelina, we will see you in the after show. Thank you for coming back to the show.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Peter Rork, who would play you in a movie?
Oh my gosh, you probably have to be Rin Tin Tin.
That's probably the perfect answer, right? We'll go with that. And Peter, hopefully we'll see you in the after show as well. We will continue the wonderful discussion. Just a little shout out to Jan, one of our regulars, because without Jan's recommendation, I would never have met Peter. So thank you for coming back, Peter. And we'll figure out what happened on New Year's Eve another time.
Thanks.
All right, so we now move on to Melanie Deziel. Melanie, the floor is yours. Who would play you in a movie?
This is a tough one. I think I'm going to go with Emma Stone, because I think she has like the right kind of energy and isn't afraid to make weird faces. And I don't know. I just feel like she would bring the right kind of energy to it.
Yeah, and you know, I'm sure you have a beautiful musical voice as well, so you could do a little Ryan Reynolds. It was Ryan Reynolds, right?
Was it? What was that? La La Land? What are they?
Yeah, I
what
know.
did they do together?
Love that movie. I love all music.
Ryan Reynolds? Was it the other Ryan? I can never know. There's so many Ryans.
Who's the other
Gosling?
one? Ryan Gosling. It was Ryan Gosling. Exactly.
A lot of Ryans out there.
Ryan Reynolds gets enough props. Ryan Gosling.
Yeah.
Well, Melanie, sorry you won't be with us in the after show, but we'll see you hopefully soon in the future.
Absolutely.
Take care. And finally, Carla Johnson, you get to share the stage. You get to own the stage. I'm glad it worked out. Tell me who would play you in a movie.
You know, I'm going to go with Scarlett Johansson because I could never look like she does in a leather anything. So that's my pick.
All right. Well, Carla will be with us. We did have one comment that wanted to know when is Carla's book out?
Thank you. It's out on Kindle, ebook on March 2nd, and hard copy in June, but you can pre-order it now. And then the audiobook will probably be out in about April or May.
And we know that you are going to come back at some point and promote the book and talk about it on the show. So we will welcome you back one-on-one on Corona TV.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. And that was Carla Johnson. And this is just me. We all know the answer to who would play me in a movie. It's been said many times, not just by me, but many other people. It's obviously George Clooney. You knew that already. I was just basically restating the obvious. Or maybe it would be someone else that would play me in a movie. Of course, I'm talking about...
You are Chuck Norris approved.
There you go. Did you know, according to Scott McKain? Hey, Scott, you just came back on the show for a second. Why didn't you tell people your little factoid about Chuck Norris?
I was just listening in raptured silence here. So I'm in a meeting, and just as a coincidence, run across this guy, and I knew his name because I'd done the movie reviews. Well, he'd been a producer of a lot of Chuck Norris's movies, and come to find out, he was Chuck Norris's best friend from childhood. They've been best buddies forever, business together, the whole bit. And we're having a drink, and I said, "So tell me something about. I've never met Chuck Norris. Tell me something about Chuck Norris." We don't know. He said he's never been in a fight in real life. That blew me away.
And the reason is because fights are afraid of him.
Exactly. Everything's afraid of Chuck Norris, even fights. But he was always the peacemaker, never the fighter. And I thought that's, because you think Chuck Norris has probably seen everything, been in so many fights, won so many fights, never been in a fight in real life.
Well, I will be back on Monday morning, Monday at midday, I should say, high noon, for another episode of Corona TV. But for now, 30 minutes on the after show. Thank you guys so much for being a part of it. Thank you, Mr. Scott McKain. Let's get on with the after show.
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at coronatv.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.
Hello, guys. Welcome. Zoom. I'm just setting this up on Facebook. It was fun.
Hello, Mr. iPhone 203451. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, I know. I change it. If you give me a minute, I will. I always change it every day.
Melissa, are you one of my students? Oh, yes. Fantastic. Wonderful.
Hey, Melissa, how are you?
Journal is 432 class.
Oh, that's amazing. So I am just starting to teach a social media course at West Virginia University. And so what I've actually said to my students, we just kick off this week with introductions. But instead of doing like office hours at one time or using their software, I said, why don't we just do it 30 minutes after every day's after show? So if you want to come to the show or the after show, you can. But otherwise, I'll just hang around. And I'm glad you came. So
I just watched the YouTube live feed, so I figured I'd just come on here.
Yeah, now you can hang out with some of our guests and as they come into the show. And also some of our regulars. Joey?
You're teaching at West Virginia University, Joseph. Melissa, are you on campus or are you home or where? How are you?
Yeah, so I was online. Like all my classes were online all last semester, and then I chose to be all online this semester because I'm leaving for an internship. But currently I am at school. My roommate and I have a house off campus. But people are still living on campus on dorms and university housing.
Gotcha. I'm involved with High Point University, and every university is, there's no one set of rules, right? I mean, every institution is approaching it differently. So I was curious how you folks are doing it there.
My son went to Dartmouth, and they have strict guidelines for students leaving and coming back, and the whole process. And it's been working out really well. It's very strict, but it's working, and that's the most important thing.
one of my great buddies is a speaker author named Joe Calloway, and Joe's daughter is at Wake Forest as a freshman, and her roommate tested positive.
Oh, geez.
And so they moved her, Joe's daughter, into the university, just rented out an entire hotel there in the Triad area, or in the Greensboro High Point area. And it's only for students who have to be quarantined.
Wow.
So they put her in a hotel room for 2 weeks, and she couldn't leave the hotel room. Meals were dropped off at the door. I mean, it's just, I can't wrap my head around that's your freshman experience
No.
at college.